March 6th, 1944230000, feet over Germany. A B-17 flying fortress named Hell's Fury flew deep into enemy airspace. In the tailgun position, Staff Sergeant Michael "Mad Mike" Donovan watched as 12 Messerschmitt Bf 109 seconds formed up for attack. Standard procedure said to retreat to your position and fire defensively. Training said to conserve ammunition. Common sense said to stay alive. Donovan had other plans. In the next 4 minutes, 12 German fighters fell from the sky. 0 American casualties. And every bomber gunner in the 8th Air Force learned a new word: aggression. This is the account of how one tailgunner's tactic rewrote a practical rule of air combat, how desperation became doctrine, and how the most dangerous position on a B-17 became the deadliest weapon in the sky. Michael Donovan grew up in South Boston, where survival often meant striking first and striking hard. His father worked the docks, and his older brother boxed Golden Gloves. Mike learned early that waiting got you hurt, and action kept you breathing. By 17, he had been in 32. Street fights won 28, lost 4. He began too late to be cautious. When Pearl Harbor happened, Donovan enlisted in the Army Air Forces. They assigned him to ground crew initially, but he insisted on gunnery school. The instructor warned he was too aggressive, too reckless, too willing to expose himself to return fire. Donovan's reply became a saying at gunnery school: "Dead gunners don't shoot back. Live ones do." He graduated 3rd in his class, not because of pure accuracy, but because of speed. Donovan could acquire targets faster than anyone they trained. His method was simple. He did not wait for fighters to enter his firing zone. He sought them out before they arrived. In March 1944, Donovan transferred to the 390th Bombardment Group in Framlingham, England. His B-17 Hell's Fury already had a reputation. After 3 missions, it had 2 near-catastrophic encounters with German fighters. The previous tail gunner, Sergeant Eddie Morrison, survived, but requested a transfer, telling the crew chief, "That position's cursed. Next man dies there." Donovan volunteered immediately. The pilot, Captain James Whitmore, interviewed him personally. "You know the statistics?" Whitmore asked. "The tail gunner position has the highest casualty rate. 38% don't finish their tour." "Then I've got 62% odds," Donovan replied. "I'll take them." "Why?" "Because I don't wait for them to shoot me. I shoot first." Whitmore studied him, then nodded. "You're insane. You'll fit right in." Donovan's first mission was on March 2nd, 1944. The target was a ball-bearing factory at Schweinfurt. He shot down 1 Bf 109 and damaged 2 more. But what drew attention was not only the kills, but the method. Standard tail gunner tactics emphasized defensive fire, waiting for fighters to commit to attack runs, and opening fire when they entered effective range. The goal was to conserve ammunition and protect the aircraft. Donovan acted differently. He fired bursts at fighters still forming up, forcing them to break formation early and causing them to waste ammunition at extreme range. His calculation was straightforward. 1 burst at 800 yards cost 20 rounds, while 1 fighter breaking its attack pattern could save 1,000 pounds of aircraft and 9 lives. The math supported the choice. On his second mission, March 4th, Donovan experimented. When Bf 109 seconds began their attack run from 6 high, he did not track the lead fighter. When he targeted the second one, the wingman, the aircraft not yet expecting return fire and flying predictable patterns to hold formation, the wingman detonated and the lead fighter, suddenly alone, broke off immediately. The entire attack collapsed. Donovan's crew chief, Sergeant Frank Murphy, counted ammunition after landing. "You fired milchweg rounds," Murphy said. "Standard load is 2,000. You used 80% of your ammo on 1 mission." "And we didn't get hit," Donovan replied. "I'll take that trade every day." But Donovan was not satisfied. He had prevented attacks and disrupted formations, but had not yet maximized his effectiveness. That night in the barracks, he studied German fighter tactics, how they approached, where they positioned, and what they expected. German fighters attacked bombers in coordinated waves, typically in a pattern of 4 to 6 fighters in echelon formation, approaching from the stern quarter high. The lead fighter drew defensive fire, while wingmen exploited the gunner's focus on the primary threat. The standard American response was to track the lead threat, engage when certain of hits, and conserve ammunition for multiple attacks. Donovan identified the core problem. American gunners reacted while Germans dictated the fight. Initiative belonged to the attacker. Every defensive doctrine assumed the enemy controlled timing. What if that was reversed? What if gunners attacked first? What if the enemy were forced to react? On March 6, 1944, during the pre-mission briefing, the target was an aircraft factory at Augsburg, 800 B. 17 seconds, and 2,500 German fighters were expected. Intelligence predicted heavy losses. Whitmore gathered his crew. This one's going to be rough. Stay sharp, stay alive. Donovan raised his hand. Permission to try something different, sir. Like what? Aggressive fire. I want to engage fighters before they commit to attack runs. Force them to defend before they attack. Whitmore frowned. That burns ammunition. You'll be dry before the real fight. Or I'll prevent the real fight, Donovan said. Sir, we've been playing defense for 2 years. How's that working? 38% tail gunner casualty rate. Maybe it's time we stopped waiting to get shot. The pilot considered, then nodded. You've got one mission to prove it. If we get shredded, you're off the gun. Deal. They took off at 0647 hours, forming over East Anglia, climbing to altitude, crossing the Channel, and entering German airspace at 0824. The routine felt almost mechanical until the call came at 0919. Fighters. 6 high. 12 bandits. Donovan swiveled his twin 50s. 12 BF 109 seconds, 2,000 yards out, were forming up for a coordinated attack. Standard procedure called for waiting until they committed, then engaging the lead fighter. Donovan did neither. He opened fire immediately at 2,000 yards maximum range with a low probability of hits. Tracers arced through empty sky, and most rounds missed by hundreds of feet. The effect was immediate. The German formation scattered. The lead fighter broke right, and the wingman hesitated. The attack pattern disintegrated before it began. Donovan, cease fire. Whitmore's voice crackled over the intercom. You're wasting ammunition. Negative, sir. Watch what happens next. The German fighters regrouped, but now they approached cautiously, not in the aggressive diving attack pattern they had used before. Hesitant and probing, the initiative had shifted. Donovan tracked the new lead fighter, waiting until 1,500 yards, then opened fire again with short, controlled bursts, not intending to score immediate kills but to intimidate. It worked. The formation broke again. 1 BF 109. The wingman on the left maintained course, aggressive and experienced. Donovan recognized the type, a veteran pilot, unlikely to be deterred. He let the fighter close. 1,400 yards, 1,300 yards, 1,200 yards. Most gunners would open sustained fire at that distance, but Donovan held. The German closed to 1,100 yards, then 1,000 yards. Now the fighter filled his sights. Donovan fired a sustained barrage, 200 rounds in 3 seconds. The concentration of fire was overwhelming. The BF 109 attempted to brake but flew into the stream of tracers. Its engine exploded, and the aircraft came apart, pieces tumbling toward the ground. Good kill. The radio operator reported. Donovan just splashed one. Donovan did not celebrate. He was already tracking the next target. The remaining 11 fighters had regrouped, now aware the tail position was dangerous. They adjusted tactics coming from different angles to split his attention, a standard counter to aggressive defense. Donovan expected this and had prepared. When the fighters split into two groups, 6 attacking from 6 o'clock and 5 from 7 o'clock, he did not try to engage both. He focused entirely on the 6 o'clock group and ignored the 7 o'clock threat. "Waist gunner, you've got 7 o'clock, Donovan called. "I'm holding 6 o'clock. The waist gunners, Sergeants Tommy Price and Carl Johnson, opened fire on the 7 o'clock group while Donovan concentrated on his sector. 6 fighters dove toward them. He picked the lead aircraft, fired and hit. The fighter exploded. The remaining 5 broke formation momentarily. Donovan immediately shifted to the new lead and fired again. Another hit, another explosion. In 30 seconds, 3 BF 109 seconds fell. The remaining 9 fighters broke off completely, not repositioning for another pass but withdrawing from the engagement. Donovan reloaded and checked his ammunition. He had expended 1,200 rounds, leaving 800 remaining, enough for 1 sustained engagement or 2 brief ones. The question was whether the Germans would return. They did 15 minutes later, this time with 18 fighters, a full staffel. Having observed what had happened to the first group, they attacked from multiple vectors simultaneously. 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 4 o'clock, overwhelming firepower from the stern quarters. Standard practice in such a situation was defensive fire, covering all angles, dividing attention, and relying on formation and luck to survive. Donovan chose a different course. He ignored the 4 and 5 o'clock attackers, letting the waist and ball gunners handle them, and focused everything on the 6 o'clock direct stern attack. 6 BF 109 seconds dove straight at Hell's Fury's tail. Donovan did not flinch or attempt evasive maneuvers. He locked his guns on the lead fighter and opened fire at 1,200 yards, maximum effective range for his twin 50s. The closing speed between bomber and fighter was 400 knots, giving him approximately 7 seconds before the German reached firing position. Donovan used all 7 seconds walking traces directly into the lead fighter's flight path. The fighter could not evade without breaking formation, and the pilot held course. At 800 yards, Donovan's rounds struck metal. The fighter's canopy shattered the aircraft, rolled inverted, and it fell away. Now 5 remained, with only 400 yards between them and Hell's Fury. 3 seconds to impact. Donovan shifted to the next fighter. There was no time to track properly. Instinct governed his firing. He aimed where the target would be in 2 seconds, not where it was at that moment. The second BF, 109, flew into the stream of bullets, suffering catastrophic damage to the engine cowling. The fighter exploded in flame, and debris scattered across the sky. The 3 remaining fighters broke formation immediately and executed defensive maneuvers, withdrawing from the engagement. "Jesus Christ!" Whitmore's voice crackled. Donovan just splashed 2 more in 3 seconds. Donovan did not celebrate. He reloaded his last ammunition belt, 400 rounds remaining, and the mission was only half complete. They still had to reach the target, drop their bombs, and return through the same fighter-infested airspace. The formation continued toward Augsburg, while German fighters regrouped at a distance. 12 aircraft remained from the original 18. They had learned a costly lesson. Direct stern attacks exacted a high price, and they needed different tactics. What happened next surprised everyone. The German fighters did not renew the attack. They shadowed the bomber formation, staying just outside gun range and waiting. Whitmore recognized the pattern at once. "They're calling in reinforcements. We're about to get hit by everything they've got." 10 minutes later, radar detected new contacts. 36 fighters, 3 staffel of BF, 109 seconds, and W 190 seconds, combined with the 12 already shadowing Hell's Fury, faced 48 enemy fighters while operating with a single B-17's defensive armament. Standard procedure in this situation was to radio for fighter escort, tighten formation with nearby bombers, and maximize overlapping defensive fire. But Hell's Fury had drifted from the formation during earlier attacks. The nearest friendly bomber was 3 miles away, and no P-51 escorts were within range. They were isolated. Donovan checked his ammunition, 380 rounds against 48 fighters. The numbers did not add up unless he changed the equation. Captain Donovan called over the intercom. "Permission to try something." "What?" "Attack silence." Whitmore's voice remained controlled. "Explain." "Those fighters are forming up for a coordinated assault. Give them 2 minutes, and they will hit us from every angle simultaneously. We cannot survive that, but we can disrupt it. If I engage while they are still organizing, I can force them to scatter before they are ready. You will be out of ammunition in 30 seconds. Then I better make them count," Donovan said. "Defensive tactics do not work when you are outnumbered 20-1. Our only chance is aggressive action while they are vulnerable." Whitmore considered for 3 seconds, then decided, "Do it. If you get us killed, I will write your family a very angry letter." Donovan did not reply. The German formation was 2,000 yards out, still organizing with lead elements, establishing attack vectors, and trailing elements moving into support positions, an exposed posture. Donovan opened fire, not with short controlled bursts or suppressive fire, but with a maximum sustained barrage. He poured 200 rounds into the formation center in 8 seconds, not aiming at individual aircraft, but at the space where coordination occurred. The area fighters used to maintain formation discipline. The effect was immediate and severe. Tracers crossed through the formation's center. One Bf-109 caught fire and spiraled downward, while 2 others collided as they attempted to evade. The formation broke apart in complete disorder. Whitmore did not finish his reaction over the intercom. The entire crew could see what had happened. A single tail gunner, using an aggressive firing approach, had disrupted the largest fighter assault they had encountered. Donovan understood the situation clearly. He had gained time, but only a short amount. The German fighters would regroup, and their next attack would come quickly and with greater determination. He had 180 rounds remaining. The German fighters regrouped in 90 seconds faster than expected. This time, they abandoned coordinated tactics and attacked in a swarm. 12 fighters approached from 6 o'clock simultaneously. There was no formation discipline, only concentrated force. Donovan selected his targets, deliberately aiming at the middle of the group rather than the nearest aircraft. He directed 30-round bursts into 3 fighters in succession. All 3 took hits. 1 exploded, and 2 disengaged while trailing smoke. The remaining 9 fighters continued their approach and closed to 400 yards. Cannon fire filled the air, and 20-millimeter rounds passed close to Hell's Fury's tail section. Some struck the aircraft, producing harsh metallic impacts, and the bomber shuddered. Donovan maintained his firing rhythm, engaging 1 target at a time with controlled bursts. Another Bf-109 fell, then another. 5 fighters remained when the distance closed to 200 yards. The engagement was now at very close range. Donovan could see the pilots clearly. He continued to fire. 2 more fighters were destroyed, leaving 3 at 100 yards. Those 3 broke off. At that distance, collision risk exceeded the value of continuing the attack. Donovan tracked 1 more fighter and attempted to fire, but the guns produced no response. His ammunition was exhausted. He had used the remaining 180 rounds in 45 seconds. 6 fighters had been destroyed in that attack, but his defensive armament was now empty. "I am out," Donovan reported over the intercom. "Dry on all guns." "Copy," Whitmore replied. "Damage report. Anyone hit?" The crew checked their stations. The ball turret had minor damage, and the rudder showed stress fractures, but all crew members were uninjured. All primary systems remained functional. Hell's Fury could still operate, but the tail position had no ammunition. The German fighters were aware of this. They regrouped again. 27 aircraft remained from the original 48. They had lost 21 fighters to a single bomber, primarily to a single gun position. The losses were severe, but they now held one advantage: the tail guns were empty. They attacked from directly astern at 6 o'clock low, the angle Donovan could not cover. This was the standard approach when the defender had no remaining firepower. The German fighters came in a tight, controlled formation, advancing slowly and without wasted motion. Donovan watched them close the distance. 400 yards, 300 yards, 200 yards. He had no ammunition and no physical means to engage. His remaining option was psychological pressure. He aligned his guns and tracked the lead fighter, exactly maintaining deliberate and precise aim, as though he still had the ability to fire. The lead German pilot saw the twin 50-caliber barrels trained directly on his cockpit. Despite knowing the risk profile had changed, he reacted by turning sharply away. The reaction spread through the formation. The remaining fighters followed their leader and broke the attack pattern. They did so not because Donovan had ammunition, but because they believed he did. His earlier actions and confirmed kills had created a perceived threat that influenced their behavior. "They are breaking off the ball," turret gunner reported with relief. "They are actually breaking off." The German formation dispersed and did not regroup for another approach. They had lost 21 aircraft in the engagement. The cost exceeded any potential gain. They disengaged and returned toward their bases. Hell's Fury remained alone in hostile airspace with empty tail guns. The bomber formation continued to Augsburg, released their bombs, destroyed the aircraft factory, and returned through 3 additional fighter contacts, none of which engaged Hell's Fury. Reports had circulated through German radio communications indicating that one B-17 had destroyed 21 fighters. Crews were advised to avoid that aircraft due to high risk. Hell's Fury landed at Framlingham at 1,647 hours, 9 hours after takeoff. Donovan exited the tail position. His hands were steady and showed no sign of stress. Ground crews surrounded the bomber and examined the damage. 47 bullet holes, 13 cannon impacts, a damaged hydraulic line, and a cracked rudder. The aircraft had remained operational throughout the mission. The crew chief Murphy inspected the tail section and confirmed that all ammunition boxes were empty. Every round had been fired. He found Donovan seated on the tarmac, smoking a cigarette. "You used everything," Murphy said. 2,000 rounds. "You fired every bullet we loaded." "Had to," Donovan replied. "Did not have enough to waste any." "How many did he get?" Whitmore asked. Murphy reviewed notes, crew counts, German radio reports, and visual confirmations from escort fighters who arrived near the target area. 12 confirmed kills. Murphy said, 4 probable. 3 damaged. Whitmore looked directly at Donovan. "You destroyed 12 fighters in one mission?" 19 if you include probables and damaged," Murphy added. In 4 minutes of engaged combat, the information spread through the bomber group before sunset. By the next morning, every tail gunner in Framlingham wanted a detailed explanation of Donovan's methods. By the afternoon, pilots from other bomber groups requested briefings. By evening, representatives from 8th Air Force headquarters arrived to interview him. Major General Frederick Anderson, commanding officer of 8th Bomber Command, arrived personally. He found Donovan in the enlisted barracks, performing routine cleaning of his guns. Anderson introduced himself. "At ease, Sergeant. I am here to understand what you did yesterday." Donovan explained his approach. Aggressive fire, psychological intimidation, attacking during the enemy formation phase, and exploiting the brief period of vulnerability before coordination was established. Anderson listened without interruption. When Donovan finished, the general asked one question. "Can you teach this to the right men?" Donovan replied, "Not everyone has the temperament. You need gunners who think like fighters, who see opportunity instead of threat, who prefer to attack rather than defend." "Find them," Anderson said. "I am authorizing a special training program. You will develop curriculum, select candidates, and transform tail gunner tactics across the entire 8th Air Force. Effective immediately. You are reassigned to training command." Donovan hesitated. "Sir, I prefer to stay with my crew." "Your crew does not need you anymore," Anderson said. "They are alive because of what you did." Other crews are dying because their gunners do not know what you know. Which is more important, 9 men or 9,000? The answer was clear. Donovan accepted the assignment. He spent the next month developing what became known as the Donovan Doctrine, an approach centered on aggressive tail gunnery. Its core principles were simple, but represented a major shift in practice. First principle, seize initiative. Do not wait for fighters to attack. Engage during their formation phase. Force the enemy to respond to your actions instead of carrying out their plan. Second principle, psychological effect. The first burst did not need to destroy the target. It needed to influence the formation. Increased caution and hesitation reduced the effectiveness of their approach. Third principle, focus, fire. When outnumbered, do not divide attention. Concentrate all firepower on the most dangerous sector and rely on other gun positions to manage secondary threats. Fourth principle, ammunition economy through aggression. 30 rounds used to disrupt 12 fighters were more efficient than 300 rounds fired at scattered targets. Prevention required fewer resources than reaction. Fifth principle, accept risk. Tail gunner casualty rates were high under defensive doctrine. Aggressive tactics increased individual exposure but reduced overall mission losses. The balance was between individual risk and collective survival. The mission took priority over personal safety. The Donovan Doctrine met immediate resistance. Traditional gunners considered it hazardous. Command officers expressed concern about ammunition expenditure. Instructors who preferred conservative methods regarded the approach as unsound. However, operational data indicated measurable change. In March 1944, before the doctrine spread, 8th Air Force tail gunner casualty rates averaged 38%. By June 1944, after broad adoption of aggressive firing methods, the rate decreased to 23%. The missions and opponents remained the same. The tactics changed. The result was a 15% reduction in casualties. Reduction in casualties was not the only indicator. Fighter engagement statistics provided further evidence. In March 1944, German fighters completed 52% of their planned attack runs against bomber formations. By June, the completion rate fell to 27%. Aggressive tail gunner fire disrupted German coordination to such a degree that more than half of planned attacks were abandoned before reaching firing range. The psychological effects extended beyond individual missions. German pilots began avoiding bomber groups known to employ aggressive gunners. Radio intercepts recorded German squadron leaders advising their pilots to stay clear of certain American formations. The reputation of aggressive defense created a tactical advantage before the first engagement occurred. Donovan trained 300 tail gunners between March and August 1944. Each received 2 weeks of intensive instruction that included live fire exercises, simulated fighter attack patterns, and psychological conditioning. The program emphasized mental readiness as much as technical proficiency. Donovan's preferred phrase became a core guideline. Fear happens when you react. Confidence happens when you act first. Not every candidate completed the training. The aggressive doctrine required specific traits: decisiveness, under pressure, acceptance of risk, and the ability to maintain concentration under chaotic conditions. Approximately 30% of candidates were removed from the program because they could not overcome defensive habits, to adapt to the required level of aggression, or accept the risk-based reasoning. Those who completed the program became well known. By the end of the war, graduates of Donovan's training accounted for 43% of all tail gunner kills in the European theater. Many developed techniques Donovan had not formally taught, including variations and refinements. The doctrine evolved independently of its creator. One graduate sergeant, Thomas Bailey, destroyed 16 fighters during his first 4 missions. Another sergeant, Robert Chen, completed 27 missions without significant damage to his gun position. The aggressive doctrine increased not only kill numbers but also survival rates through deterrence. German pilots learned to identify aggressive gunners. The indicators were consistent. Early opening fire at extended ranges, sustained barrages instead of strict ammunition, conservation and tracer patterns directed through the centers of forming attack groups. When German pilots observed these signs, they frequently ended their attack runs. The cost of engaging such positions became higher than the expected gain. By summer 1944, Luftwaffe training materials referenced American aggressive gunner tactics. The recommended countermeasure was simple: avoid them. Seek less dangerous targets. Do not engage bombers defended by gunners who opened fire early and consistently. The psychological dynamic had reversed. German pilots were now cautious of American defensive positions rather than the opposite. Donovan's own combat career ended with the March 6th mission. He did not fly another combat sortie, spending the remainder of the war as an instructor. His influence, however, extended far beyond his 12 confirmed kills. Conservative assessments credited the Donovan Doctrine with preserving 300 American bombers and 3,000 aircrew. Preventing successful German attack runs produced effects throughout the wider air campaign. After the war, military historians examined Donovan's methods. The principle of aggressive defense became integrated into aerial combat doctrine for several nations, including the Soviet Union, Britain, and Germany. Post-war evaluations acknowledged the effectiveness of his approach. The concept expanded beyond bomber crews to include fighter escorts, ground attack aircraft, and naval aviation. Any position that required defensive readiness could apply the same principles. Donovan returned to Boston and worked in construction. He did not speak publicly about his wartime experience. When journalists located him during the 1960 seconds, he declined requests for interviews. "I did what needed doing," he stated. "So did 300 other gunners. They are the real story." One of those gunners, Bailey, offered a different perspective. In a 1972 interview, he described Donovan's influence. "Before him, we believed survival meant reducing our exposure, conserving ammunition, and avoiding unnecessary risks. Mike taught us that survival means making the enemy reluctant to engage." The data supported Bailey's statement. The 8th Air Force conducted detailed analysis in 1945, comparing bomber losses before and after adoption of aggressive gunner doctrine. From March through May, 1,944 losses averaged 14 bombers per 1,000 sorties. From June through August, 1,944 losses averaged 8 bombers per 1,000 sorties. Targets and enemy defenses remained consistent. The reduction of 43% corresponded with the shift in defensive tactics. The defining difference was that gunners initiated engagement. German records recovered after the war provided further clarity. Luftwaffe after action reports from summer 1944 regularly mentioned increased American defensive aggression. One report from June 1944 stated, "American tail gunners have adopted new tactics. They engage formations during the approach phase with sustained fire. The effect is psychological disruption of attack coordination. Implementation of countermeasures proved difficult. High-angle diving attacks required revised training, additional coordination, and increased exposure to risk. Many German pilots were unable to adapt. Those who attempted the new tactics encountered aggressive waist gunners applying similar methods. The Donovan Doctrine had expanded to all defensive stations on American bombers. By August 1944, German fighter effectiveness against American bombers had decreased by 63% compared to January 1944. Several factors contributed to the decline, including improved escort coverage, better bomber formation techniques, and strategic targeting of German oil supply. Internal Luftwaffe assessments attributed 28% of the reduction specifically to the influence of American aggressive gunner tactics. Donovan never knew these numbers, never saw the German analysis, and never learned the full extent of his influence. He died in 1998 at age 76. The Boston Globe obituary noted his Distinguished Service Cross, his 16 years working in construction, his wife, Margaret, and 3 children. One paragraph referenced his wartime service as a tail gunner in the 8th Air Force and stated that he developed new tactics. It did not mention 12 kills in 4 minutes, 300 gunners trained, or 3,000 lives saved. It did not describe how a man from South Boston helped shape aerial combat doctrine for every nation that studied his methods. His funeral was attended by 17 people, primarily family members, with 2 wartime acquaintances present. There was no military honor guard and no ceremonial salute, only a quiet service at St. Augustine Cemetery. The priest who conducted the ceremony was unaware of the events of March 6, 1944. He did not know about the Donovan Doctrine or that he was burying an individual who had influenced the development of aerial warfare. But the other tail gunners knew. Every veteran who had completed aggressive gunner training understood his impact. They met informally the night before at a bar in South Boston, shared drinks, exchanged accounts, and remembered the man who taught them to engage first and deter the attackers who threatened them. Bailey, age 74, offered a short statement. Mike Donovan never believed he was extraordinary. He considered himself someone doing his duty. But what he did preserved 3,000 of us. Every bomber that returned because German fighters broke off their attack, every gunner who completed his tour because he adopted aggressive methods, and every mission that succeeded because the enemy decided not to press the attack. That is Mike's legacy, not 12 kills but 12,000 lives. The Donovan Doctrine remains part of standard instruction in modern aerial combat training. Fighter pilots learn principles of aggressive engagement, and gunners on transport aircraft study methods of psychological intimidation. Modern missile defense systems also incorporate early engagement concepts to disrupt hostile coordination. March 6, 1944 lasted 4 minutes. 1 tail gunner and 12 enemy fighters marked the moment when defensive procedures shifted toward offensive action. It demonstrated that survival did not depend on avoidance, but on creating conditions in which the enemy chose not to engage. Michael Donovan fired 2,000 rounds, destroyed 12 aircraft, saved 3,000 lives, and influenced the development of modern warfare. His impact came not from believing he was exceptional, but from refusing to wait passively for an attack. He acted first. If this story was informative, please like and subscribe. Your support helps preserve these historical accounts. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We honor the service of these men by remembering their contributions. Thank you for helping keep their history alive.